Feels good.
Our guest is already looking at his watch.
Yeah, he's like, what are these guys doing?
Let's get this rolling.
Seriously.
Are we rolling?
We were recording the whole time, weren't we?
Yep. We always record the whole time.
That's how you get all the solid B-roll.
That's right, the juicy stuff.
Yeah.
So, welcome. Good morning. We're in episode 30 of The Gist.
Wow.
Yeah, 30 episodes in, and still actually enjoying it.
Yeah, enjoying it and still in our infancy.
And still in our infancy. There's been a lot of growth and growing and learning. That's actually why we were here this morning, and part of our weekly regime is elevating what does The Gist look like moving forward.
Right.
So we're shifting it, the context, deepening the context a little bit. It's less about a podcast and it's more about a way of life. And so how do we reflect that as like something that we're up to, that we want to talk about and share about. And it's going to take a little bit because we also run full-time gigs and got families and all of that shit. So
that's the thing though, is like anything that starts off as something always ends up as something else. So you start finally getting to the end of it. It's or even to the middle or slight beginning, whatever it is, it always transforms, right? So as long as you're willing to embrace that, that's usually when the good stuff comes. So.
Yeah, I guess, and that's what has us down here at 7:30 on Saturday morning.
Yeah, you know, it's a beautiful morning though.
It is. And this space is always really nice to play inside of. I've always enjoyed.
This building's amazing.
Yeah, it's very creative. I feel the creative juices flowing.
Absolutely.
So, episode 30, and we have another special guest, Nathan Elson.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Are we looking at that?
You can look there if you want. You can look at us if you want.
All right.
And there's no rules to how we do things.
Just however you feel like doing things.
Yeah,
that's right.
Just keep the flatulence and rude noises to a minimum.
Yeah, do your best.
Yeah, so Nathan's come to kind of shoot the shit with us for a little bit for the next half an hour or so. And Vern and I, when we were coming down here, we were thinking about, okay, so what are we going to talk about with Nathan?
Yeah.
Like, that's a really good question, Vern. And this is probably something we should have thought of a little bit before, not an hour before. But then, so I got really connected to the fact that we don't actually know each other that well. We had a few conversations. I know that you run a business in photography and video production, and you're doing pretty well at it right now.
Life is good.
Life is good. And there was an interesting thing that you put on the table as a concern, let's say. You're like, yeah, things are going good now, and I'm just not too sure how long that's going to last.
Yeah, well, and that's part of like, you know, this, I don't know, I've been thinking about a lot of this whole, I guess, creative endeavor as a means to make a living. I've been doing this for 10 years, so I'm not, super seasoned, but I'm not fresh meat either. I've got a little bit of perspective at this point. But yeah, like throughout those 10 years, there's been moments where, everything just feels like it's completely falling into place. Nothing can derail me. Everything's exactly as it should be. And then a month or two later, the bottom falls out, and you're trying to figure out what happened, why, like where did this come from? How do I fix it? And then you ramp back up. And I don't know. I guess for me, because I started listening to you guys' podcast, but a lot of it was actually after the post that you did where you were having a shit day.
Yeah, things weren't working too well.
But I grabbed onto the honesty of it, and I just thought, like, this is amazing, because in this social world that we live in, everybody paints this majestic brush of like, oh, everything is amazing, I'm so busy, and I've got the best clients, and I get to travel all the deals, and a lot of it is bullshit. Like, there's so much of it but you see all of it, and you're completely like,
well, you make it mean something going, he's in Italy again? Like, what the hell's going on here?
But
why am I not living his life?
Yeah, but then I saw that post that you had, and it was kind of like, you were questioning everything, kind of like, why the fuck am I doing this? And I reached out to you and I said, listen, obviously, there are times when this happens. This is when you figure out, one of the best things anybody ever said to me is like, you truly figure out when you're an entrepreneur, when your back is so far up against the wall that you don't know, you can't go anywhere else.
Right.
That is when the entrepreneur brain kicks in, you figure it out, you plow through, and you make it happen. It's not always easy, and it doesn't always work out, but that is typically when you figure out if you can problem solve.
Yeah.
And so, I sent a message out to Dave, and I just said, hey, I've been there, and I know I'll be there again. I've recognized that through the shifts of what it is in my industry. But as long as you, kind of like keep your head up and realize that, today sucks, but tomorrow might not.
Yeah.
Then you can hammer through it, because it is easy to fall into the why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder to find the reason through that to figure out why you wanted to do this in the first place.
Well, and if it's actually even big enough, inspiring enough to source you through this thing now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, is what I'm up to actually worth it?
Yeah, right. If you're striving for survival, then it's probably not that compelling.
Yeah, right.
and that's the thing, is like you kind of have to, for my industry, being a photographer, is, I really like what I do. Like I get to go to a job every day that I loved doing prior to making it a job.
Right.
There are days when it feels like work, because now it is my career. There are days where I'm shooting something that doesn't feel overly creative, but it's paying well, or, going to a place I didn't really want to go, but it's just part of what I have to do, or writing 1,000 bids to land 4 of them. It's just,
God, those are good odds.
yeah, it's just, it's one of those things where, there's this grind to it that can take away some of that luster of what made you fall in love with, for me, photography. But when it became a career, there's different parts of it that can kind of chip away at it. And if you don't, find ways to make that part of your life better, and or take what you loved about photography and start doing more of that for yourself,
right?
Then it becomes something that you didn't want it to in the first place. And that's when you start questioning, like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Is this worth it? Is this really what I wanted? Different things like that. And so it's, like I was saying, it's really easy to fall into the negative of almost anything in life. It's really hard to stay really easy.
Isn't that the interesting thing about it, is that you have the opportunity to create whatever you want in your mind. You can speculate all you want, but it's so funny how most people, in my experience, it's easy to pull is to go negative. Like, what if this happens? Or what if that happens?
Yeah.
Like,
you can talk yourself out of anything.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I'm really good at that.
It's interesting. So what area of photography do you focus in, and why would you say things are going so well? Like, what's got you lit up these days?
Well, I'm a portrait guy. So typically, like 95% of my work is portrait-based, photographing people. And I don't know, there's different aspects to it where, I live in Calgary. Calgary is not a town of celebrities. Calgary is not a town of fashion. Calgary is a business city. We do business here. That's kind of like the bread and butter of it. It's a very corporate city. So I looked at that, and I've got a family where we've kind of set our roots. I love living here. I love being close to the mountains. We're close to family back in Saskatchewan. It all kind of makes sense. There's other places I could go, but I would kind of cut myself off from all of that just for photography.
Right.
So I started looking at it, and what is it that I like about photography, and what is it that I would like to do? And a lot of that is, I really love editorial. I love that whole kind of creating an interesting image, something that makes people want to stop and take a couple of seconds to look at it. And so I started approaching corporate photography in that sense, taking a CEO and putting him somewhere on a rooftop overlooking the city versus standing in front of a gray backdrop with his hands lightly crossed in front of, or different things that way, and just kind of taking what I love about certain styles of photography and applying it to what it is that's available for me here. And what worked out is all of these companies kind of went like, holy shit, okay, I didn't really think of doing it this way. This is awesome. Like, this makes our brand, our company, or whatever look elevated. And so it's just kind of steamrolled from there.
That's interesting. I was listening to a talk on the weekend, a video, and the guy was talking about, in business, be where other people are not.
Mm-hmm.
So he's talking about having breakfast meetings with clients, for example.
Yeah.
Well, other people are not doing that, so
Yeah.
that's why it could be valuable. So same thing. I mean, you could take a really nice photo, you could edit it really nice, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the gray backdrop kind of gets a little bit,
Yeah.
you know. And I'm not that great of a looking guy, so I'd prefer to have a nice backdrop. It would be pretty cool outside or downtown Calgary or whatever. Right?
And I mean, and it's just one of those things where, you know, just my general approach to my business has always been that I love meeting people. That's another reason why I'm down here. I like having conversations with people, and when I'm meeting all these different people, be it, you know, a CEO of a major company or somebody who's a startup or somebody who's a musician or somebody who's an artist or something like that, I get to hear all these random stories of life and kind of like how they got to where they got to be and everything like that. And some of the most, you know, like kind of to me important portraits I've taken are people who have contacted me to shoot like end of life portraits. They've got cancer, they're going to die in a few weeks. They've seen my work and they go, you know, I really like what you've done, especially with black and white work. I love black and white, and a lot of people get drawn to that. And so they say, you know what, I would love to have one of these portraits of me for my family. I take that, A, as a huge compliment.
Absolutely.
But B, as I get to be, you know, I get to learn more about life in terms of like getting to go through something that I'm not actually going through and kind of getting that perspective.
Yeah.
And so for me, when it comes to all of that, it just comes naturally. But the other side of that is when people ask me, like, what do you do for marketing? I just say, I want as many people saying my name as possible. I want when somebody mentions photography to say, you should check out Nathan. Because that's that automatic gold stamp. If somebody finds an ad on Facebook or something.
Yeah, they're still not sure.
Yeah, they go like, oh, you know, it's good work, but whatever. But if somebody says, I'm looking for a photographer, and their friend, coworker, family, whatever says, you should go check out Nathan, there's like that gold stamp.
Yeah,
that
for sure.
Somebody who they trust has given them the okay to contact me. And, you know, for Calgary being a big city is such a small town. And so people are always changing within industries, ad agencies to different, you know, marketing departments within different companies, and they take me with them.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just, that's kind of like been my bread and butter in terms of everything is just relationships, getting people to know who I am. I like to have fun on set, but I like to create good work, and I just want everyone else to have that same idea. When they show up, we're going to have a good time, but we're going to create something that, you know, works properly for what you guys are doing as a company, and it's translated well. I've been fortunate. So.
That fits right inside of
That's exactly
the gist, I would say.
what we were expanding on this morning.
Yeah.
This need for fulfilling play and just like excitement around what's possible, what's going to happen next versus, fuck, we gotta do photography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I hate getting my headshot done. Right?
Yeah.
That would probably be the one line I would say you hear.
Oh, the
don't
biggest
feel
thing I
that.
hear is I hate having my photo taken.
Yeah.
To which I reply, I know, but somehow I've made a career out of it. But it's one of those things where, you know, it's depending on who the client is, sometimes it's deemed as a necessary evil. And other people are legitimately excited about creating something.
Right.
So, but I always tell people too, you hate having your portrait taken until you've seen a good portrait of you.
Right.
Yeah.
And when they see
There's a
it and they
difference.
get excited and they're like, oh wow, that's different than anything I've ever had.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well that's my job.
Yeah. I'm
That
not
is-
going to
that's
walk
what
in
I'm
here
here
with a
for.
selfie stick. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
I'm here
do
to
some work.
I want to make something for people that they
Yeah.
haven't seen.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, I'm not creating new, like, you know, I'm not breaking down any walls. I'm not creating anything that people haven't seen.
Right.
But I'm just doing something here that a lot of people aren't.
Right.
So I don't pretend that I'm creating this new genre that's unheard of. I just, what I like about photography, for whatever reason, fit into something that people weren't doing here yet.
Right.
So I kind of got lucky in that aspect.
And in the relationship building component of it, you now had a space that you got to create and nurture to allow that for them to be open to it.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? I trust you.
And
And they might not be familiar with what you're doing or know what the end result's going to be, but the relationship is such that trust is there.
And in the
they're
beginning, that trust wasn't there, and that was the
Well,
tricky part.
right.
Is I have these people coming to me and they're saying, "Listen, we like what you're doing, and we're interested in that, but we're just not sure how it's going to be received."
know yet.
Yeah, and so I remember one of the first kind of, big corporate jobs I had was photographing executives for Gibson Energy. And so they came to me and they said, listen, last year our annual report, we had all the executives, they were sitting at a round table, arms up on the table, just kind of whatever your standard photo would be. We want to do something different. And so I said, okay, awesome. Just, let me come check out the space and I'll see what I can do. And the president had this massive office with all these big windows and everything. So we moved in some couches and we had like some chairs put in and we had people kind of staggered all over and just made something that was a little bit more dynamic. And so we shot that and I thought it looked great. The creative department came over to me after this. Okay, listen, we like this, but maybe we should shoot that round table shot just as a safety. And I looked at her and I said, you hired me to not do that. Just give me 2 seconds or whatever. So the president, his name was Stu, I still remember that. I called him over and I said, listen, I want you to take a look at this shot because I'm shooting tethered to my laptop. He looked at it, he goes, yeah, this looks amazing. And one of the other guys came over, he was a shorter guy, but he was standing where the people were sitting. He's like, I look tall, I love it. And all this went on. And I looked at the girl who was running the creative department, I said, we're done. We don't need that shot. Just trust me to go forward with this. And I just kind of kept that mentality of you brought me in here to do something because you were bored of what you had. So just trust me to make it happen. And eventually got to the point where my work started kind of speaking for itself and people going okay, this works, so.
There's a huge amount of value in that, I think, because David and I were just talking about we're creating a culture and a vision for what the gist is, for example, and we talked about being aggressive, and words are just words. We get to add the meaning to it, right? So you can come from aggression, obviously what people probably think about to dominate somebody, but you can also be aggressive where you're coming from a place of compassion, but you're going to stand your ground and say what needs to be said.
Yeah.
Right? And you believed in your work, and they asked you to do a job, and you just reinforced that by saying, well, look, this is what we did, right?
Yeah. And why go back to, because everybody wants that safety.
Oh, yeah.
And they look at it like this is their bosses. These guys aren't my bosses. I don't look at them in the same light. These are just people to me. Mm-hmm. To them, this feels like their job is on the line. But so, I kind of, if there's questions, I go past it and I show the people who are in charge. Yeah. And as soon as I get their stamp, everybody just kind of waits out the side and off we go type thing. So it's interesting in that regard where, every once in a while you just, you have to, it's not being a bully, it's just saying, you brought me here for a reason.
Right. Yeah, you're
follow through on that reason.
What you're good at.
Don't bring me to do something that you didn't bring me on for the first place.
So I want to ask you a couple things about your life and what you're up to, because you said you listen to some of the podcasts, right? Yeah. And so what we're doing here is showing people that, for lack of better terms, every person has the opportunity to live a life that they say they want to live.
Yeah.
You actually have a hell of a lot more say in how things go.
Mm-hmm.
What we do really is just subconsciously we let ourselves off the hook all the time. Yeah, well, this is just how it is, and this is how I have to do it, and I got bills to pay, and yada yada yada, right? So you said that you have a family.
Yes.
So you're running a business. You're doing well right now. You've been doing it for 10 years. I assume you did something before that. So if you could give us a little background around how you got into doing the job that you love, your business, and what your thought process is some days on those days where it's like, what the fuck am I doing?
Well, for me with photography, it was a complete accident.
Okay.
I was not a school guy, an academic, if you will. It wasn't that I couldn't do it, it's just that I got bored so easily.
I don't really want to.
I don't deal well with authority. Authority for one. Authority. Being told what to do doesn't sit well with me, obviously. Having a boss, not a good thing. But it's just, for me, kind of doing that day in, day out, punching the clock, having this set routine always. Yeah. It just, I'm bored of it very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was, I guess 23 or 24, I'm 37 now. And I bought my first camera. It was a little film SLR camera, and I literally bought it just looking for something to do. I had no intentions of creating any.
You weren't like, I'm going to be a photographer.
Yeah, I was just, it was mostly, hey, I'm kind of bored, and I had a lot of friends that were musicians and artists in different regards, stuff like that. And I kind of thought, you know, they're getting something out of expressing themselves in some way. I can't draw. I don't play any instruments. Can't sing. So I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Yet. And
karaoke tonight.
Yeah. And so I ended up buying this camera, and you know, like most things, I took close-ups of flowers and park benches and fire hydrants. You know, the macro shots that everybody goes through. And it would go through moments where I'd shoot all the time for a couple months, and then I wouldn't touch it again for a few months, and then come back and do it. And it wasn't anything that I really put too much thought into. But then when I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, because I was working like warehouse jobs and stuff like that, just kind of, you know, making like $8 an hour and just being young and not having any responsibility.
Totally.
But I started figuring out, you know, I'm getting into my mid-20s and I should have some sort of direction in my life. So I took a year of arts and science at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon, and one of the classes I took there was a black and white darkroom course. So I learned how to develop film in the darkroom and stuff like that, and I started to get more and more interested in it. And then I had a friend who had come here to take the photojournalism course at SAIT. And I thought, well, I like cameras. Maybe I'll give that a go. So applied, got in, did my first year of journalism, because the second year is the photo part, and realized I am in no way a journalist whatsoever. Like, I had zero interest in it. Yeah, this was just not the path for me whatsoever. So I left that. Didn't complete that, and then I ended up getting a job at the camera store downtown here, and I worked there for like a year and a half-ish, and during that time I got married, and I was starting to get more and more involved in cameras and everything like that, and I was starting to find out I had a pretty good eye for it and that kind of thing. And my wife and I were coming back from our honeymoon, and we had driven down to Vegas, which I'll never do again. People said that drive was amazing. It's not. Awesome. I don't know. It's like, I guess if you went down the coast, but we just kind of went down the mountains, and I'm like, it's sort of like looking out my window every day.
Right.
For like kind of 15 hours, you know? Like, it wasn't until we got to the top of Utah and everything kind of like red rock and desert. I was like, okay, well this is cool, but it only took 15 hours to get here.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, so on our way back from this trip, I said to her, I was like, you know what? I'm totally like a sink or swim type of guy, and if I don't just jump into this and try it, I won't do it.
Right.
And so she said, yeah, sure, you know, give it a go. Let's see what happens. And at the time, she was a commercial property manager. She was making good money. We'll close the door.
There needs to be a quiet on set.
Yeah. Stop talking in my back. And then there's grates on the window.
Yeah. But we'll see what we can do.
So yeah, on the way back, you know, we had that discussion. She was a commercial property manager at the time, so she was making decent money. And we didn't have any children.
Your wife?
My wife, yeah.
Right.
So on our way back from our honeymoon, and you know, so I quit my job and I started doing this. And when we had our daughter, which she will be turning 8 here in July. After my wife got off mat leave, my business still wasn't where it needed to be in order to support us. So I basically would watch my daughter from like 7 in the morning until 7 at night, and then try to work from 7 at night until like 2 in the morning, and then do it all over again. I did that for you know, like a year, because it was one of those things where if I didn't, I wasn't going to get anywhere. And if I wanted it, this is what I had to do. And so when we had our son...
Can I just cut you off for 1 second?
Yeah.
I want everybody to hear what you just said right there. You just said, if I wanted it, this is what I had to do. Period. Was that always comfortable and sunshine and rainbows? And
no, it was awful.
Right.
I felt like my eyes were going to start bleeding at some point.
It was awful.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's the grind, right?
You were playing for something bigger than yourself, though.
Yeah.
It's like, that's awesome. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead, your son.
All good. And then, so after my son was born, a couple of years later, my wife went on mat leave again. And when it was coming time, we looked at everything and realized, you know what, we're basically in a position where we could just do it. You know, like if things kept going as they were, then we could just kind of scrape by. She wanted to be at home with the kids. I wanted her to be at home with the kids. I wanted to do this more, you know, with more freedom, if you will. And so that's what we decided. And then, so that was, my son will be turning 6 here in July, both July babies.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so that was 6 to 7 years ago when she finally stopped working, and yeah, I just ever since the business has just kind of like grown and grown and grown, and there's been different directions. I was shooting weddings at the time, but I knew that I wanted to go more into the corporate commercial world, and so, but at the time, weddings was like 80% of my income. So, and I was getting to a point where the weddings I was shooting, people were paying me, like I was making between $6,000 to $8,000 a wedding, so it wasn't small money, and people were giving me $4,000 to $5,000 a year in advance as a retainer. So it was one of those things where when I eventually said, you know what, I'm not shooting weddings anymore, which have been about 5 years ago now, I'm going all corporate commercial. It was interesting to just like changed. People are saying, hey, we want to give you this money, and I'm going, I can't take it because I'm not doing that anymore, but I need it.
Yeah,
but I can't. But if I want to get to where I want to be, I needed to figure out a way to make it work, and so, I did. It's been fantastic.
There's some gold in here that I just want to break down really quick. First of all, commitment. Like, no, I'm not going to take your $3,500 check right now when I have mouths to feed. Yeah. Because I have something that I'm committed to. I have a dream over here that I want. Yeah. And you knew if you just keep taking that action, you're going to get the same result, which is shooting weddings on weekends in the summer. You use the word decide a couple times. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with etymology, and I might get this wrong, but the word decide basically means that you're cutting off any other possibility. So when you decide on something interesting happens with the brain, and just if you believe that there's other stuff going on out there that we're not, aware of. Yeah. Things start to happen when you just make a decision, you make a choice that you're going to do this thing, things start to flow into place. So commitment, decision. I also hear support and community. So you have like your wife who believed in your dream, you guys had a plan, like, okay, wait a minute, we could do it. Yeah. Right? Okay, no, you have to go back to work. I'll work from 7 to 2 in the morning. Like, it's just, I'm really inspired. And the thing that people need to hear in all of this is that would you describe yourself as like a Joe average? Like, you're a regular guy, right? You're a normal human, right?
Yeah, no. There's nothing special.
You don't have any superpowers or anything?
No.
And you would say that you're living a pretty good life and you're doing something that you love and you enjoy.
My children are provided for. I get to do something I enjoy. My wife has gotten to be at home and raise our children. She's going back to school in the fall now, so cool. We're just paying for that. She's going to go into social work and save people's lives while I capture the commercial world. It's but yeah, we're just kind of finding things that we wanted to do in our lives, and we're just kind of trying to set ourselves up to make that all a possibility. So
right, and set yourselves up. So that means, again, when you make a decision to do something or there's something you want in your life, there's adjustments that you have to make, right? There's shifts and things you have to give up and other things you have to start doing that you weren't doing before. Yeah. Right? It's all about making it work.
Yeah, and it kind of all falls into this whole balance of, realizing that the trajectory of life is going to always change. And the same with what you guys were saying at the beginning of this, where the podcast, you're trying to figure out what is it going to be. Well, that's life. It constantly takes all these different varying points where you need to decide, like, do I want to go this way? Am I going to go left or am I going to go right? And which is going to be,
and then owning that.
Yeah, and then committing to it and deciding if this is what I want, then this is what I have to do.
Owning that, and then also being big enough to deal with the inevitable curveballs. Like, shit's going to happen. Yeah. You're going to lose a contract, or you're going to, like, that stuff's going to happen, and then it's a matter of, then do you just fold up and say I'm done, or do you double down and keep it rolling?
And that's the thing. It's like trying to figure out exactly kind of dealing with those losses and finding ways to fuel them into either doing better on your next endeavor, be it the same thing or something completely different, and just trying to just realizing that there's going to be hiccups, bumps, complete caverns that happen in whatever you're doing, and just figuring out ways to kind of know that when that happens, how do you get yourself back out?
So now that you've shared a bit about your story and you're feeling some success, things are going well. Yeah. Can you share a little bit about like what you guys do for fun, what you do with your family, how do you get away, how do you clear your head?
Well, that's kind of the funny thing too when you were saying, everybody has the ability to live their best life. And I'm not amazing at that. It's, you know, I think
that's a work in progress for everybody.
I get into the grind, right?
Yeah.
And this is something that like a realization I had the other day, where when I'm really busy, I just wish it would slow down a little so that I could do more of the things like go hiking or, you know, do whatever and just enjoy that time. But then as soon as that time becomes available, I start freaking out and looking for more work. Yeah, like instead of just, you know, kind of settling into it and going, okay, this is that time you were hoping for. Use it before it runs out and, you know, you're back into the mix of it all. So the other day I was just hanging out and I was sitting at home and I was doing some work on the computer and I was looking at my calendar and, you know, I didn't have much coming up and I kind of started getting into that little like, well, you know,
gotta fill it up.
Yeah, I've got money in the bank, but you know, for how long, stuff like that. Is this where things are going to slow down? You know, always that what if moment.
Right.
But then I realized, I was looking and I go, I don't want to be here right now. I'm not doing anything. So I grabbed my kids and we went for a hike in the forest. I was just like, I'm going to get way more out of that than sitting here trying to figure out where my next job's coming from.
Yeah, totally.
And everything like that. And then, like 2 days later, all of a sudden now I've got 4 or 5 more jobs lined up. And so rather than sitting there and not taking advantage of that time, I'm starting to try to teach myself that when I do have these available moments, to try to make the best of them, do something, enjoy the freedom that I have in the job that I've created where I don't work 9 to 5. If it's a Wednesday afternoon and I don't have anything going on, I can go do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And
that you actually created your life that way.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's that balance between, you know, realizing that there's still a grind when I get back and not just falling into this whole mix of like, well, I'm like maybe going to do something for a week.
I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, so, and that's kind of the fine riding line with a lot of entrepreneurs, I guess, if you will, in the creative industry, is that they kind of get this mentality of like sitting in a coffee shop is doing work. No, it's not. You're just sitting in a coffee shop because it's fun.
Yeah.
And you know, so for me, it's when I'm not busy, going hiking, you know, playing ball, playing hockey, doing sports, going camping. I love camping. It's like my favorite thing in the world. And just making time for this, and especially with like my children and stuff like that, introducing to these things and giving them an appreciation for, you know, the world and adventure and, you know, getting dirty and doing whatever. And it's just, for me, my balance has been trying to figure out that I need to take advantage of those times and actually do more of it. Because I think David asked me, like, you know, what do you like doing? I listed these things but I followed it up with, but I don't do them nearly enough.
Right.
So I'm trying to do that more now.
Can I offer you something?
Yeah.
And can I recruit your services for a second?
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Okay, cool. So this guy is the master of structure.
Yeah.
And and you know, we build accountability structures around us to be more intentional about creating that balance. And you know, there's a book that I'm reading, and I read it and reread it. It's called The Parable of the Pipeline. And he's talking about how important it is to build pipelines in your life financially. So a lot of people, we go to work every day, we get paid. That's the equivalent of trading your time for money, which he refers to in the book is carrying buckets. You're carrying buckets of water, and people think, well, if I want to have a better life, or if I got a big problem, I just need a bigger bucket. Yeah. But the idea is eventually you're just going to pour out all of the water in the bucket. It's going to be empty. You're going to have to go and carry another bucket eventually. Yeah. So he talks about spending a part of your time carrying buckets and paying bills, basically, and then spending a part of your time building a pipeline, finding places to put your water, for lack of better terms, your money, that will build and grow and pay you for the rest of your life. Right? Yeah. So inside of all that, he talks about, you know, what would you do every day if you had $1,440 at the beginning of every day? Yeah. Like, what would you do? Yeah. You know that tomorrow you're going to get another $1,440, right? Yeah. So what he's referring to is 1,440 minutes in your day. Like, that's what you get. So he's like, you get to choose how you're going to spend those dollars, and you also get to choose how you're going to spend those minutes. Donald Trump and the three of us have the same amount of time in a day.
Yeah.
Granted, we have dramatically different lives,
Yeah.
but the point is people who are really successful, they're intentional about their time, and they're intentional about where they spend it, and it's filled up with all of the things that bring them joy and fulfillment and recharge and effectiveness.
Yes.
Right? So in the beginning, this book here, I don't know if I think I can share this on
Yeah,
here.
of course.
This is the self-journal. This is just happens to be the structure that I'm using right now to run my life. If I don't use this thing in tandem with like my electronic calendar and my notebooks and stuff like that, so I know what's going on in my world, but I get to intentionally put in here, like, this is the target, this is what has to happen today, this is my goal or my intention for the day, right? So I'm always in here looking at what are the things that are important in my life. So education is important to me, family is important to me, self-care is important to me, my business is important. So if all of those things matter, I'm now intentional about, okay, making sure that I have that balance in my life.
Yeah, and because that's a huge thing too. There's so much where, you know, people on like say like a broader scale, when people say, you know, like, how do I start this business or anything? And I always tell people, like, I have a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, and a 10-year plan. And there's shifts that are going to happen in those, but if you don't have a sense of direction of what you're doing, you have no idea how to get to where you're going, type thing. And so for me, I'm definitely not as focused as that self-journal. I think that's a brilliant idea. I'll give myself, like, this is like a list, a check-off list of this is what you need to get done today. But sometimes it just kind of like gets thrown into rambles, and it's just, I don't have dedicated
so
time
huge
blocks
that you don't actually get to.
Yeah, and I don't have dedicated time blocks of like, well, this is where I'm going to work on this is what I'm going to do here, this is what I'm going to do here. It kind of just turns into like, well, what do I actually feel like doing? And sometimes that's none of it, and then it sucks, right? But that's brilliant, like, to actually kind of, make sure that you're dedicating your time to the things that matter.
And the idea behind that is, like, obviously this is paper and we're living in real life, so there's a slight difference there. So things will come up for me, but the idea with this is that I recognize that, okay, if I was supposed to do something at 10 a.m. and a call came in or something happened and it ran over time, I now get to be responsible for that commitment and then replace it either later in the day or later in my week.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that, it just has me stay present to what it is that I said I was going to do, what's important, and you know what I mean? And then I schedule the things in that need to get done. And my family is a huge part of that. It's like, I actually schedule in the time. Okay, what does my week look like? Because if I start, you know how it is, we could all work 70 hours a week.
Oh yeah, easily.
So I start looking at my week and going, okay, I'm out on Tuesday night, and I'm out on Thursday night, and then I'll block off Wednesday night that they're non-negotiable. I only go out a certain amount of nights per week, but if I'm not careful, if I'm not actually paying attention, if I'm not present to what Tuesday looks like, I could have made a commitment on Wednesday that now has me feeling anxiety. Like, oh fuck, I'm out of the house 3 nights this week in a row. That doesn't work, right? Yeah. So that's what it's. Now, the reason why I said to recruit David's services is because he's the one with the structure, and he's the one who gave me this journal, and then we now use this as a framework to hold each other accountable.
Did you make this journal then?
No, it's actually something that you can buy. So it is called the Self Journal. Best Self is the name of the company. And what's super powerful about this framework, and I use this in tandem with 3 other structures actually, because one supports the other. And if you were to look at it, the big blue sky picture, when you get clear about your big blue sky picture, and that is however far out you decide to look, and in your case it could be as far as 10 years, and you start to filter that back, that's great. Okay, so I know what it is that I'd like to see happen in my life, and then what's the next layer of structure and support that are still that they're the milestones, if you would like to classify it that way. They're these things that then you need to hit as benchmarks in order to have that big vision happen. And then there is the granular daily way of being and actions and tasks that would have you hit that milestone. The problem with some of these structures is we are in the moment, usually all the time. And yeah, we're doing lots of stuff. To your point, like there's a list that we're knocking off, and we got lots of it done, but we're still not. There's a missing, like a feeling of fulfillment out of that. It's like, yeah, but like, why did I do all that stuff again? I'm not even. To what end did that actually have me go and move towards some of these key milestones or the big vision that I'm working towards? And we rarely give ourselves the time to sit and think and be in that type of chaotic unknowing and start to make sense of it, so that there is a compass that starts to show up. It's like, yeah, this is true north for me. This is the thing that I'm committed to working towards, and this daily practice is this document, this book, along with one other one, which is kind of one step up from here. It's more the week. Is my if I were to go into battle, it is my battle plan. But there is an objective for that battle plan. Like we want to go, we want to conquer over there.
Yeah.
And we are all clear about that. But that battle plan, man, if you leave that battle plan at home, or you don't even think about what that battle plan will look like the next day, there is no guarantee. This creates a guarantee that there's a direction and momentum.
So I'll put some real life to it. For example, you had talked about when things are empty, it's like, oh, I got this time.
Yeah.
But now I'm getting a little nervous of what that looks like. So, for example, and then believe me, I'm also a list guy. Like I'm way more effective when I have a list. Yeah. But here's kind of what happens for me, or what the difference is. This allows me to be a lot more focused and intentional on my list, and knowing that, okay, this action actually moves the ball forward.
Yes.
Versus, again, I could spend literally all day just in my email if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So, we're all in relationship businesses. So, for example, I make sure that I build into every single day I'm in contact. I'm in communication with somebody. Somebody knows that I'm alive, right? Yeah. So for yourself, it's the same thing. You have people that are bringing business to you. You have people that have expressed interest in business. You have other maybe networking events or other things that you do to generate business. Yeah. So you can just, and I'm not saying that you don't do this because I don't know enough about you, but being mindful that, okay, you know what, every day I'm just going to spend half an hour on that, deepening relationships or finding ways to, generate new business, so that you constantly have your pipeline filled and you don't experience as much. It's always going to be there, but you don't experience as much of that, dramatic ebb and flow. And then you can consciously create the time to be with your family, for example. Yes. Like, so that you're not working, into 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then it's like kind of kiss the kids goodnight and high five your wife and go to sleep.
Yeah.
Right?
Good day.
Yeah.
See you tomorrow.
And I think that's the thing too, is like with all of this, if you have, because basically it gives you a plan. Yeah. Like what is today, and when you have that, it's so much easier to be productive and to feel like, you know what, I got everything done today, and if you get it done early, well, now I've got extra time to do all this other stuff, right? Right. But I find on days when I have some sort of structure like that, I'm way more productive. I'm like, I'm getting up at 5:30 tomorrow morning. I'm going to have this stuff hammered out by 9. I'm going to do this at 10, stuff like that. That day is just like...
Yeah, it flies, right? Because you're not stuck in your head all day. You already have it laid out of what it looks like.
When I wake up and I'm like, all right, well, what do I need to get done? Yeah. Those days, production levels about 1.8.
May as well just stay in bed.
Yeah. So, no, that's actually brilliant.
Check like that. Yeah, we'll send you a link for that. Yeah. And be mindful of time here. We're coming up to our half.
I'm a talker.
Yeah. We're all talkers.
If you give me space, I'll keep going this for like 3 hours.
I was even like, ooh, I should say about this, but I'm not going to.
We'll do it another time.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a theme. There's a really great theme that came out of this. I'm looking forward to digging in. So we're going to go into our magical. Our magical room of
our dungeon.
Our dungeon. I was trying to play it up.
Not make it sound so detrimental.
Yeah. So thank you for taking the time and digging in with us and exploring with us. Now I've got a much better sense of who you are and what you're up to and how life has been for you. There's just so much gold in every one of our journeys and those milestones in our lives when we actually take the time to think about it. And that's really what this is about, is to acknowledge you, and for you to really be able to acknowledge yourself inside of the milestones that you've achieved and why you've achieved them, and the difference that they've made and that they continue to make.
Yeah.
Because there is something that you created as a structure, whether we're present to it or not, whether you were present to it or not, that has you show up a certain way moving forward. You will always be of service to yourself and to others, and that is a theme through all of this that we create. Is anybody can do that. Anybody can create that type of environment that has them now make a difference somewhere else.
How many people say that they wish they could spend more time with their kids? Well, yet you've spent the last 10 years of your life creating it such that your kids have mom and dad around.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
You did that.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
And and that was the goal when we set out to first, when we set out to start this, to create this business, was we wanted someone like, my dad worked full time. My mom was around to raise me. My wife's father was a farmer, so he would have busy seasons and off busy seasons, and then my wife's mother was a lab tech, so she, the hospital's just down the street. So we both had parents around a lot, and we wanted that for our kids. And so when we set out to create this, we're like, well, what do we need to do to make that a possibility?
Right.
And I'm very fortunate that I get to do what I do, and it's worked out the way that it has.
So what does he need to do, and also showing gratitude? I love it. So if you guys want to hear a bit more about Nathan, if you want to get in touch with him, we can make that happen.
Yeah, we'll put it all in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it all in the show notes. And this is episode 30. We want to remind you guys that we want to hear from you guys. We want you to say hi at thegistpodcast.com. Share a story, leave a comment, give us some feedback, maybe ask a question. We can do our best to give you some advice. Non-professional, of course.
There you go.
I don't know about you, but it'll always be professional on my side.
Yeah, you can take that liability, that's fine.
Yeah. Fair. I will be responsible for the actions, but it's totally professional. Anyways, we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.
And that is how you do that.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome.
Yeah, man.
Do you want to have a peek at that?
Yeah, sure. There's
you can give me the non-written in pages.
Oh no, yeah, it's all good. But if you actually just look, if you leaf through the first little bit here, it actually gives you some instructions, and then there's all these empty pages back here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been pretty helpful for me, and like I said, not to mention we're now doing accountability calls, or what would you call them? Accountability calls, or more just
like check-ins,
kind of check-ins, getting present to what's going on in your world. We're doing that every Monday morning, Wednesday, and then middle of the day on Fridays.
Okay.
They create a really cool context for why you do this work, and then so this is a 13-week roadmap. So the work that they get you to do here is inside of what is it that you want to achieve inside the next 13 weeks. And then to keep yourself trued up to that, because you're constantly checking into that objective. And as well, another really cool thing that they create here is what kind of habits do you want to create? What's missing that would make a difference in your life for yourself, your personal well-being, and then it also gives you a structure to keep yourself accountable to some of those. Like, did you actually do that? And when you check in at the end of the week, you get to look and see,
there's a weekend,
how did it work?
Review.
Did you actually do what you said you were going to do? And if not, how do you improve it? And if you did, well, congratulations.
You answer those questions. It's like, what went wrong sort of deal.
Yeah.
And you can get...
it's a really powerful structure.
You kind of get present to your own bullshit, because...
I keep saying I want this thing and I keep not doing it.
Yeah. You can justify, like, you don't even realize how quick you let yourself off the hook.
Oh, man. It's like, even for me, it's different things like where, if there's, for me, it was like, well, I really, over the past year, I wanted to get more into video. And I'm finally starting to, but for like the first year, it was like, wow, I don't really have this, or I don't really have that, and I should probably wait until I have that before I do this. What the fuck? Shut up. Yeah, but and it's just, it's, you, like you said, you can let yourself off the hook for things super easy. It's like, well, I don't know. It seems like
maybe I'll look tomorrow.
Maybe I just didn't have time today to sort that location out.
And in full disclosure, this was printed out of a PDF that they provided.
Okay.
And the ones that they have are bound and they're super polished and nice. But I wanted to try it out, and we ended up getting a run of like 50 of them done.
Oh, okay.
Because they were so cheap.
Yeah.
So I just keep using it until I don't
Yeah.
have anymore, right?
Well, and the thing, like, because I was looking, there was somebody that were talking about journaling type thing. It's kind of the same concept where you have sections in this journal that, you know, are like things that need to be done today, things that need to be done in a week, things that, you know,
Yep.
what are plans for this and everything like that. But it's for people who are like, you know, they're pretty. You go in and you make all your
The
like,
bullet journals.
hieroglyphic,
Yeah.
whatever.
I tried
shit.
that and I lasted all of like 2 days.
Yeah, and I just don't have the artistic sensibilities for it. So
Even
mine
with
would
the
just be
artistic
like,
sense, I'm like,
whatever.
I'm bored.
Yeah.
It's too much.
So
it's gonna draw box.
something like that where it's like it's just done for me.
And it's also what's cool about the self journal, I find, is that there isn't a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
It's like there's 3 objectives. What are your 3 objectives? Like, in other words, you got to drill down and go, yeah, I could put 40 things in here, but
Yeah.
what are and I'm going to do 40 things today,
Mm-hmm.
but what are the 3 things that I must do?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
You
a
know?
great context for it. These are the things that are going to move you forward.
Yeah.
So, are they the things that are going to move you forward, or is it the thing that's easy for you to go done?
Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
good today.
Look
Nailed
at
it.
I emptied my spam folder.
That's right.
Holy
Pretty
shit.
much. I don't know what that's going to do for me, but
Yeah.
I feel good for right now.
So what's the rest of the day look like for you?
Oh, what is going on today? Not much actually. Today's kind of a day off. Tomorrow we're gonna go down to Drumheller, and one of my buddies, his brother's a firefighter, and so they've got the parade in Drumheller for Canada Day. So they got a firefighter float.
Cool.
And apparently it goes right past my buddy's